What's up, beautiful people? It's your boy Joshua Martin, and this is going to be an in-depth review of the Veydra 35mm mini prime lens. The first thing you're going to notice about this lens is that it is really small, but don't let the size fool you. Veydra has manufactured their lenses to be cine-prime lenses in a smaller form factor. The build quality is excellent. The entire lens is made out of metal, from the front threads to the rear mount. It has a good weight and it balances well with my GH5. The focus ring is super smooth. It has a rotation of 300 degrees so you can get some nice smooth focus racking. The T-stop ring is clickless and is smooth as well. But sometimes it's a little bit too smooth. If you're hand holding this like I often do, I have big hands, so I'll tend to knock the ring and change my exposure. So just be aware of that. I did wish they kind of had a little bit more friction to it, just like on my 25mm from SLR Magic. This ring is really stiff for its aperture ring, but compared to the Veydra ring, it's a little bit more smoother. So yeah, like I said, keep that in mind. And just for fun, I want to show you all a comparison in size from the Zine 35mm and the Veydra 35mm. Look at this thing, and this Zine is pretty hefty. You know, I use this for the FS5 or any Canon mount, because this is a Canon mount. Isn't that crazy? Like the quality that Veydra has packed into this small lens for the price, it's really good. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's move on. The minimum focusing distance on this lens for the Veydra is 11 inches. That's actually super close. And keep in mind that this lens is actually not a 35. The equivalent of this lens is actually 70mm. So you're going to get super tight, super close to your subject, and it kind of acts like a macro lens. So I really like this feature. This lens is a 77 thread mount, which is kind of standard, but I mean, if you need to step it up to the 82, you just get a step up ring and boom, you're good. It also features the standard gears for your follow focus, which is 0.8. Let's move on to the more important thing, which is the optics. I'll tell you, the moment I actually picked up this lens, I noticed how sharp it is throughout the range. Now, it's not perfect, but man, the quality coming out of this thing is pretty amazing. I'm gonna let some B-roll roll and I'll give you my thoughts after. So if I was to say which T-stop has the best optical performance, I would have to say T4. It still gives you some nice bokeh, some separation from the background in your subject. It's sharp all the way through. You don't see a lot of chromatic aberration or fuzziness. And granted, you remember this lens is like a 70mm lens, so that compression is going to help out with whatever's going to be in the background for your bokeh and things like that. Moving on to color, I believe this lens renders colors really well. It doesn't shift them. The greens, the blues, the reds look vibrant, even the yellows and orange. Let me show you a quick comparison of the SLR Magic 25mm and my Veydra 35mm lens. As you see, the SLR Magic has a bit more green in it in comparison to the Veydra. And also notice the sharpness and quality. Like, these are both at T4, and the SLR Magic is super soft compared to the Veydra. And just remember that your lens, the color might shift here and there depending on what the lighting situation is. I personally feel like the Veydra holds itself well. It's pretty neutral in most cases, so I think that's a pretty good thing. The bokeh on this lens is super nice. It's super round. That's because it has a 10-blade iris, which gives you those nice circular bokeh. And as you're racking the focus, you'll see little to no breathing on this lens. Along with the bokeh, you'll get some nice blooming with flares. Actually, the blooming can get distracting, especially if you just point it almost directly into the sun. It fills up the entire lens, the entire sensor with this light. So just be mindful of that, as you can see in this example here. It gives nice flares. You'll get some, like I said, blooming, and also some longer like sun rays flares. Now, chromatic aberration is quite noticeable once wide open at T2.2. Even with some normal stuff like textures from a camera, you can actually see where the quality of the lens is kind of breaking down when it comes to light reflecting off of a weird angle. You'll get some purples, you get some pinks. Stopping down around 5.6 would give you the more crisp look. My final thoughts on this lens, I think is an absolute beast for what the price is. You're getting a steal for getting a true mini cinema prime lens in a smaller form factor, especially for micro four third cameras. The image quality coming out of it is really good. It's sharp from T4 all the way through. The colors render nice. It doesn't shift anything. It's not too warm, it's not too cool. Focus breathing is maintained. I find myself using this lens way more than the 12mm that I have. I just like the focal length. I like what it does to the background, how it pulls my subject, how it shapes my subject and doesn't distort it. I've used this lens in interviews. I've used this lens for smaller projects. It's a really good lens all around. So I hope this review helped you kind of get a sense of what this lens performs like. If there's anything I missed in this video, please let me know in the comments below. Show some love. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now, because there'll be more tutorials, more reviews, and more creative content coming your way. So follow me on Instagram, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.